Hello and welcome to the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston's Global Connections Conversation. My name is Marianne Maldonado, and today my guest is the CEO of Weatherford International, Mr. Girish Saligram. As some of you here in Houston may know, Weatherford provides wellbore and production solutions and operates in 75 countries and has a global network of approximately 17,000 team members and 380 locations, including teams in research and development, training, and manufacturing facilities. And they're also a recognized industry leader for their comprehensive technology portfolio, broad global footprint, extraordinary culture, and strong customer relationships. It's my honor to have Girish today with us. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He's a fascinating individual and got to live in one of my favorite cities. But before joining Weatherford, Mr. Saligram served at Exterran Corporation as Chief Operating Officer and previously as President Global Services. Prior to Exterran, he spent 20 years with GE in industry sectors across the globe, including his last position as General Manager, Downstream Products and Services for GE Oil and Gas. As I mentioned, he was based in one of my favorite cities, that was Florence, Italy, as he led GE's oil and gas contractual services business. And before his 8 years as in the oil and gas sector, he spent 12 years with GE in healthcare and engineering services, operations, and other commercial roles. Girish, thank you for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Marianne, thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine, and I'm very privileged and humbled to be part of this. So appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Well, the World Affairs Council is all about global education, global understanding, and it's you're the greatest person really to help us understand a little bit about the global footprint of Weatherford. You've been around since the early 1940s. You've ascended to the ranks as one of the top oilfield service companies. Tell us a little bit more about your global operations.
Sure. Thank you. And you're right. We are an incredibly global company, very proud of that. We are one of the leading oilfield service providers in the industry and very proud of the legacy that we have, which is really built on technology innovation and customer service. So we operate in about 75 countries around the world through the 17,000 terrific employees that we have that you mentioned. We operate across about a dozen different product lines that we bring to market in a couple of different ways. One is discrete product lines, and secondly, in an increasing fashion, in an integrated way, coupled together with a robust service offering that sort of brings synergies, but also a digital suite that enables us to connect different platforms across our product lines. We have a very global manufacturing setup along with local service centers. And we are very proud of the fact many of the countries that we operate, our workforce is completely local, and it is from within the country or within the region. And we really operate the business around our geographies. We've got 8 key geographies, and we really run the business through that. And in many countries, we've been there for several decades, as you pointed out, since from well before I was born. It's I just got back last week from the Middle East and had an opportunity to meet one of our key partners. And he was telling me about the day that Weatherford really started in the United Arab Emirates, and he was there. And he was talking about a day before I was born, and that was incredibly humbling of the sheer legacy that we have and the importance that we have contributed to all of our communities that we play a part in.
Well, we're going to talk so much more about your global operations, but first, the energy industry. Houston, kind of every economy in the world has had a very, very challenging year and last few years. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your priorities as you're kind of relatively still new in the role, and what facets of the restructuring are you leaning on to make Weatherford a more competitive company?
Sure. You're right. The whole world has gone through the effects of the pandemic, which has been, a little bit bifocal in my view. In many ways, just a terrible thing clearly on the humanitarian side, so many people that have suffered. But on the other side, that's also led to a ton of creativity and innovation, which I think the pandemic has to a certain extent accelerated. Then our industry had the commodity price collapse last year, and a lot of aftershocks that have rippled through and now coming back, to a certain extent and sort of hopefully stabilizing. And then at Weatherford, we've had our own share of challenges. We had just come out of a Chapter 11 process right before the pandemic hit in December of 19. Since then, have had a set of management changes. So we've been dealing with some of our own internal challenges that we're working through. As I look at the company, I don't know if I can call myself new any longer after 6 months, but I am incredibly energized and optimistic about our future. Every single day, I build on that, and I feel a lot better about the path that we are on. And it's really a credit to the team that we have at the company. For us, our objective is relatively simplistic. It's really getting the company on a path to sustainable profitability and free cash flow generation. And this is, it's something that we have been working very hard on for the last couple of years. We have accelerated that momentum over the last few months. And, it's coming from a couple of different places. The first is structural cost improvement. And that's a big aspect of how we do it. And it's structural cost, look, unfortunately, is a little bit of a euphemism in many ways for reducing our workforce, et cetera. But just beyond that, for us, it's about organizational simplification. It's how do we make all of the different aspects of the business work better together while continuing to deliver for customers. The second and very critical aspect of it is technology differentiation. As I mentioned earlier, I think the pandemic has accelerated innovation, and especially in our industry, we are seeing some remarkable examples of that. And so it becomes even more important for a company like us to continue to invest in technology, to make sure that we are providing cutting-edge solutions that differentiate us from our competitors in the marketplace. And then finally, for us, it's about protecting our balance sheet. We've made a lot of progress. We continue to focus on that, and the way we drive, our cash flow and our returns will be a key part of how we build our future.
Well, I'm going to invite members of our audience to submit your questions through the Q&A tab. But Girish, I want to ask you, 6 months in now, what has surprised you most since you've taken this role?
Hey, look, so a few things. The first one was probably the fact that my pants didn't fit when I realized I had to come into the office after several months of work from home. But on a more serious note, I think really two things that have surprised me more than anything else. The first one is just the incredible resilience, tenacity, and commitment of the Weatherford team. Now, that may sound like, hey, why would you come in if you didn't expect to see a great team? But, as I looked at the organization from the outside, and I looked at a company that had gone through so much over the last few years, in my mind, it would be natural to expect a team that was feeling a little bit down, a little bit beaten down, and has gone through so much change. But it is the single most energizing thing for me in my job, to interact with our teams around the world, to talk to all of our people out at customer sites, in our factory floors, in engineering and sales. It just fills me with a sense of optimism and incredibly high energy, because they are so committed to the success of Weatherford. They're so committed to delivering for our customers. And that's been a treat for me to see. The second thing for me that has been a really pleasant surprise has been really starting to understand the intersection of the differentiation of technology that we provide with the capability to do that in a pandemic-fueled world, and especially leading to this notion of remote operations. So understanding how we are now using technology to promote remote operations, which drives efficiency, but also improves safety. And that the whole convergence of all of those things to me has been a very interesting awakening. And I think it's going to be a really important factor for us in the future.
You talk about safety. Long ago and far away, I was in the oil and gas industry and was taken out on a rig and walked up the many, many stairs to the drilling rig floor and noticed that the handrails were kind of tacky. And I thought, wow, what a great safety feature. You're not going to slip. Well, it was wet yellow paint. Speaking about those kind of safety features, remote operations, so much has already been done in the industry because you do work almost 80% remotely. How has the pandemic affected? How have you shifted a little bit? Because now you have a workforce, maybe a base that's now going to be also, or has been working remotely. How has that changed or shifted in the last year or so?
Yeah, great question, Marianne. Look, so first of all, our focus has really started with the pandemic itself. So making sure that we are taking all of the necessary precautions and observing all of the appropriate protocols with all of our teams around the world. We talk a lot about work from home, right? But in our industry, the reality is most of our teams have actually been working the way they've always been. They've been going out to work sites, they've been on drilling rigs, they've been in the factories, so the work from home is actually a much smaller population. And so it was really important for us to make sure that we had the right protocols in all of our work locations to make sure we observed, social distancing, had the right masking policies, education of our teams on the importance of the hygiene factors that go into it. And then separately managing crew rotations, which is a really important factor in a business like ours, right? Especially when borders get closed and it's difficult to have logistics move around. We've got people who've been at the same location for several months who are typically on an 8-week on, 8-week off type of a rotation. And that's incredibly challenging for individuals. So then it goes beyond, the physical aspect. It goes into mental fatigue. It goes into emotional fatigue. How do you connect with your loved ones back at home? So managing all of that. So that's been a huge factor for us. Separately, though, what the pandemic has done is it's allowed us to really accelerate this concept of improving safety through remote operations. A couple of different examples. We've installed liner hangers remotely in Russia as an example, because we couldn't get people on site, and we worked very closely with our customers, and we have enabled that. And now you've got experts who can look at exactly what's going on through a screen, and when you realize now you've got the ability to really get greater efficiency through the system, because you can have great expertise at your fingertips for all of your critical operations versus relying on getting an individual on a plane, going from place A to place B, etc. We've also done a lot of work, on rigs, for example, especially in offshore. It's a hugely important thing to reduce the number of personnel on board a POB, as well as get people out of the so-called red zone, right? That's a huge factor. And we have really deployed automation technologies and mechanization to help improve that. So we've got a product, as an example, called Vero in our tubular running services business, which completely changes the paradigm of how we run these services. And that's a huge factor. So it improves efficiency, it reduces cost, but mostly it improves the safety aspect of it. And so we think that's a huge innovation and something that customers have embraced, and we're very pleased with how that's getting rolled out.
Kind of taking a macro view, how do you see the pandemic, the switch to more dependence on technology, how do you see that affecting the whole of the oil and gas industry globally?
I think there's a few different elements around that. So I think, first of all, the whole concept, as we've just talked about, of remote operations starts to become a lot more real. And for a industry that has always had a very, very high threshold on risk and does not want to take risk, rightfully so, I think this has enabled newer technologies to come in to allow remote operations that are actually improving efficiency and safety. So I think we'll see a significant improvement in cost and efficiency and the ability to deploy expertise through that. I think that's a big factor. I think the second thing for me that's a little bit maybe more mundane, but it's an important one, is I can reflect back on my last 11 or 12 years in oil and gas and actually think through a number of different examples where I've gotten on a plane and traveled 20 hours one way for a 2-hour meeting. and look, and all of us will say that we never do that, but let's, when we think back about it, we've all done a little bit of that to a certain extent. I think it has actually opened all of our eyes to the importance and the convenience of conversations like this, right, where we can have great interactions and you can develop and you can continue to build on relationships that you have. It's never going to replace the feeling of an in-person meeting, but you can do a lot. And so we've actually continued to connect with customers. I've met so many of our major customers since I've started, and it's almost all been virtual, right? Which, if you think about it, when I came into the role, that was the thing I was most worried about, is how am I going to transition into a company that I don't know? I don't know anyone. I don't know the business. I don't know the technology. I can't meet anyone, right? So so to me, the fact that we've been able to do that is truly a testament to the technology advances that we have in the organization, et cetera. I think the last piece, though, that we really all started to think about over the course of the pandemic, not directly related, but it's been one of those corollary effects, is the whole energy transition. And how, again, technology plays a huge part in driving, again, efficiencies, new ways of delivering services, and how do we all play playing the piece in some of these alternative forms of energy, et cetera. So I think it's going to continue. This is an industry, we tend to think of it as an old industry, but it has the most amazing technology deployments, and the things that we do in this industry, drilling at the depths and the pressures, the temperatures that we do, the amount of work and technology that goes into actually extracting hydrocarbons is tremendous. And we don't normally get a lot of credit because as I talk to some people, I've got to sometimes occasionally remind them that when you plug something into the wall, the electricity doesn't just automatically come out of the wall. There's a little bit that happens behind it, right? And that's enabled by technology, but I think it'll continue to accelerate going into the future.
You talked a little bit about energy transition. We'll get to that in just a second. But in terms of technology advancement, how do you develop a long-term sustainable strategy when technology is changing so quickly?
Yeah, hey, it's I think one of the unique challenges that all of us face, and we've got to figure out how to do it. For me, it starts with the customer. That's the number one thing. It's really understanding what is it that our customers need solutions for, and working with them collaboratively to develop roadmaps to work towards fixing their problems versus, hey, I'm just going to build it and they will come type of a mentality. I'd love to do that at some point in time, but unfortunately, we are not all in the Steve Jobs and iPhone type of paradigm. But to me, understanding the problems customers have, which, if you think about it, that's kind of how all of that started too, right? The second thing is a commitment to continue to invest in technology, right? It's the easiest thing, in my view, to start cutting, especially during a downturn. And one of the things we feel really good about is, throughout all of our challenges, we have continued to invest in technology, and we've brought a lot of these innovations to bear. A new rotary steerable system called Magnus on the drilling services side, the Vero piece, which I mentioned on tubular running services, our Victus system in managed pressure drilling, where we are continue to be a world leader, and many other things like that. We've just developed a new new multi-phase flow meter called Foresight Flow, which is a tremendous innovation because it actually eliminates the nuclear source in that. And all of that has been because we have partnered with customers, understood what their pain points are, but then had the commitment and the discipline to continue to invest. The last thing I'll say is, look, for me, when we think about technology programs, it's really important to have a methodology that's really about rapid prototyping, fail fast, understand, try stuff versus, we're going to take 2 years to go build something and then hope that the world is the same. So I think we've got to keep having this sort of iterative type of a process, again, collaborating with our customers while we're doing that.
Having a differentiated portfolio, ongoing innovation, it has to be difficult. How do you know when and where to invest?
Well, first of all, to me, it starts again with the customer, asking them and making sure you're constantly checking back. The second piece is having the very rich domain and technical expertise that we are fortunate to enjoy. So people who really understand technology. The third aspect is, you've got to be able to look at what the trends are in not just in your particular sector, but what's happening in the world across. And one of the biggest things for me today is convergence. And the whole concept of it's not just enough to have great mechanical technologies that you're developing, deploying. It's not enough to just have great thermodynamics, etc., or artificial intelligence, or 3D printing, or industrial diamonds. It's how do you bring all of it together in a concerted solution, and that's where the magic really happens in my mind, and that comes with great product management. We've taken our engineering teams, our product teams, put them all together, really creating one unified technology and product management organization, and we think that's continues to build again on how we have done it. Now, no longer looking at a single product line, but looking across all of them and bringing in all of these newer technologies and newer ways to analyze data and bring it all together in a concerted fashion to deliver solutions to customers.
Convergence, it's so important. And many of us probably don't think about that in a global mindset. Just thinking about that and all the other global innovators that are in the industry, what do you look for in partners? How do you collaborate when you're dealing with governments and private companies and public? There's just so much involved. How do you work with your partners, kind of in a global perspective?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've been, again, going back to your question on surprise, I've actually been fascinated by how robust the legacy and the ecosystem is of partnerships within the OFS sector. And I have an enormous amount of regard and respect for all of our competitors and what they do, and the tremendous amount of technology and service offerings that they bring to market. And I think we all learn from what others do, and force each other to get better. Specifically, though, in terms of partnerships, we look for a few things, and we are very fortunate to have some outstanding partners. Just as an example, we have a joint venture in Saudi Arabia that is over 40 years old again. Talk about a rich history, and it's a tremendously successful joint venture that we have in that region. But for us, partnership starts with, first and foremost, having the same values and the same beliefs and the same ideals. So and the cornerstone of those are integrity and safety. That's really important for us, is partners who understand and who truly commit to those principles. The second then is we look for complementarity. Where is it that we can help each other to get a better solution versus each of us doing the same thing, maybe just a little bit incrementally better than each other. So that complementarity is a really big deal. And then ultimately, though, does that give us a differentiation in the marketplace, right? And does that allow us to create innovation that actually commands value? Because without that, if everyone's just building this so-called better mousetrap, you don't get a whole lot more. But can we do something truly innovative? And again, I've been really, really impressed with our partnerships, but also just what I see as the overall ecosystem.
One of our members has asked a question sent in previously. Technology advancement is one of the secrets to success. How do you maintain this edge?
So look, it's to me, it comes down to people and investment. We have got to make sure that we continue to focus on the technical talent that we have within the organization, and it's a huge part of we've got a very, very strong research development and engineering team that's got people who well, I can't even compare because their intelligence levels are way above mine, and I'm in awe of our technology teams, and but that's the brains behind the company, right? They are the people who innovate, they're the people who think of new stuff, and that is an incredibly important resource for us. We've got a facility here in the Houston area on Spencer Road, which actually has all of our product lines come together. It's a terrific place. It's a great place for us to take customers when we can get fully back open again. I had the privilege of going there in my second week in the company and was just blown away by what we've got. The second thing, though, again, is going back to investment, is making sure, look, my job as CEO, there's very little that I actually do, as I keep, reminding people, and most people remind me that, you don't actually do a whole lot, but one of them is to allocate resources. And most important one is, capital, and then deploying talent. And so for me, making sure that we have carved out the appropriate amount of investment to put in. And it's, you've got to break that out into, how much of it is sustaining what we've got, protecting the intellectual property that we've got. How do you maintain the edge? And then you've got to make sure you've got stuff that you're putting in for growing some of the, burgeoning technologies, things that you're excited about. And then finally, you've got to have a little bit that you put in to seed the future that you may not be able to envision fully right now. You've got to be able to take some risk and take some bets. And so that's one of the things that, and it's really tough, especially in a tough economy, in a tough market environment, to say you are going to take bets. And so for me, that's really important for me in my role, but also through the rest of the organization, to encourage our teams to make sure that we're taking the bets for the future, so that, yes, we've got to eat in the short term to grow in the long term, so to speak, is one of my favorite expressions, but you've got to make sure that you're seeding the future.
Great answer. So we all know that here in Houston, we might have a more familiarity with that. That oil and gas production is going to account for a significant portion of our world energy supply for the foreseeable future, at least. With the convergence of artificial intelligence, automation, decarbonization goals, how is Weatherford positioning itself?
Look, again, we think all of these themes are not just important, they're inevitable. And, as I think about the energy transition, to me, there is no doubt that we're in the middle of a transition, or, at some point in that spectrum. How long it's going to last, I'm not smart enough to say. Is it, 5 years? Is it 10 years? So I'm not going to sit and speculate about, when is it going to end, but it's really important that we recognize we're in it and we continue to drive that. So, we've got a few different things that I'm very excited about that we have talked about before. So first of all, I'll start with our core operations, what we do every single day, and a continued focus on making those operations more effective, more efficient for customers, to naturally just reduce our carbon footprint that we deploy. And this is, all of the things we've talked about, reducing the personnel on board, right? You think about it, reducing one person from a TRS crew that goes on to an offshore rig has a tremendous impact in the overall operations, and it reduces our footprint significantly and enables our customers to do the same. And so, into our core operations, driving remote operations, driving data analysis, driving artificial intelligence, driving automation and mechanization, ultimately with the view of doing things more efficiently and with fewer people that's required, I think is one critical aspect. The second piece of it is, now what is happening during the transition is all these alternative energies and new elements that we're trying to work on. So how do we play? So we've got a few things that we are excited about. The first that we've talked about previously and continues to be a big focus for us is geothermal. We've had a very rich history again in geothermal operations, well over a decade that we've been drilling wells. On our previous earnings call, we actually talked about a well that we drilled in Saskatchewan in Canada. That's the first of its kind with the unique technologies that Weatherford brings. And so, that's one where you can take the technologies you have today and directly shift them over into an adjacency space that has a lot of similarities, and that's really important for us. Similarly, on carbon capture, we've got technologies that allow us to monitor, carbon storage in the well, et cetera. And so we're working with customers on that as well. And then lastly, on aspects like plug and abandonment, we've got a terrific offering called Firma that has had a fair amount of success, and we're continuing to drive that, where it's rather than selling again discrete products, we really bring it together as one holistic solution to customers. Say, we're going to take care of the whole thing and make sure that we are driving your plug and abandonment needs in a holistic, sustainable fashion at the right value, right? And that's a critical component of that. We see a lot of other companies investing in a lot of futuristic stuff, hydrogen and lithium and all of that. We are not quite there yet as Weatherford, just given some of the challenges that we've had. So we are focused much more on the technologies that we have and how do we bring that to bear in adjacent markets and really improve our operations on a more sustainable basis.
Global operations all around the world, thousands of employees. How does geopolitics affect your business operations?
Oh, look, we've always had a philosophy that, politics will kind of continue and you've got to stay focused on delivering to your customers. And, but it's inevitable in business. There is an interaction. For us, the way we look at it is, first of all, we are a company that is going to follow all of the US laws and regulations. We're never going to run afoul of those. Second, though we do operate in a lot of local jurisdictions, and so complying with those rules and regulations is incredibly important for us as well. And so making sure, so for us, that's really the focus around it. We really try not to comment or get involved in specific political matters, but we do recognize that the world is fluid, and so our challenge and our job then becomes, how do we make sure that we are positioned to either take advantage of changes that happen or be able to react when adverse things happen. So, we've got the ability to, we've had countries that we've had to pull out of given certain geopolitical events. We've had countries that, we've occasionally been able to take advantage of because we're able to go back in again. So it's really about understanding what the overall market view is, but then always remaining compliant within the legal frameworks that we have.
So you talked about some of your global operations, the Middle East, Abu Dhabi. I think, did I hear Saskatoon or Saskatchewan?
Yeah, my pronunciation you can't go with, so I'll trust yours, myriad.
Where else are you guys in the world?
Look, we are, like I said, we're in 75 countries around the world. So we're, a very, very global company. One of the things I like to talk about, this is before Weatherford, but it's so true, even more so true in Weatherford, is I used to think I was a very global person because once a quarter I'd hop on a plane and I'd go to Singapore and Tokyo and Paris and come back to land in O'Hare in Chicago. It's like, oh, after a 2-week trip, I'm so global, right? And once a month I'd get on a 5 a.m. video conference. And then I joined oil and gas, and I had the pleasure of visiting, a lot of interesting places like Bintulu Island, or Bintulu on the Borneo Island in Malaysia. I had, the jungles of Obi in Nigeria. I was up in Sakhalin in Russia, and various other places. And then you realize what global actually means. And I think that is one of the most tremendously exciting aspects of our industry. We operate in places that most people, at least in the US, don't normally go to, and may not even know. I mean, I've been to places that I genuinely did not know before I joined oil and gas where they were. And so to me, that has been truly an awakening and a terrific learning and growth opportunity. But it's also, I think, a terrific testament to our industry on how we have contributed to the development of communities in those areas. And oil and gas has been the driving economic force that has transformed a lot of those communities. And I think that's a really, really important aspect of that. So look, we have a terrific business in the Middle East, pretty much all of the Gulf and in the Kingdom of Saudi. We operate in Europe. It's one of our important regions. We have got a huge business in Latin America, spanning from Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, multiple countries, and then we've got a business in Asia and in Russia as well. So as global as you can possibly get.
One of the questions comes in asking your background in healthcare. How did your expertise in working in healthcare and Houston having the largest medical center here, how did that translate into kind of capabilities that you currently are calling on for your role?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Thank you for that. For me, it's a few things. So the first one is the importance of quality. And, in healthcare, I learned very, very quickly, my first visit to an emergency room, seeing one of the CT scanners we had installed, you really understand the importance of quality, because in a clinical setting, it's a matter of life and death. And so in our industry, quality has the same impact, right? We operate in inherently dangerous environments. We operate with inherently dangerous elements. And so making sure that all of our processes and our systems are designed to ensure safety and efficacy out in the field is one thing that I bring directly from healthcare. The second thing, which has actually been a really, I think, a helpful thing for me, is coming from an industry that is actually very, very fairly well regulated and has very deep systems and standards, to an industry that has a lot of bespoke, a lot of customization that goes on with it, and understanding the importance of standardization and structured products, etc. I think is one where the industry is gravitating towards a lot more within the right regulatory frameworks that we have. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity that all of us collectively have in the industry. And so that's something that I get a lot from. And then the last thing that I'll say from a healthcare standpoint, I'm dating myself a little bit on this because it's been a while since I was there. But look, the amount of technology, and again, going back to this concept of convergence, I had the fortune of working in the medical devices sector of healthcare, and actually had the opportunity to work on CT scanners and other diagnostic imaging equipment. And you realize it's not just about one particular thing. You say healthcare, but it's really materials technology that goes into detectors. It's about software. It's about cutting edge microprocessing design. It's about true mechanical design, because you're spinning a CT scanner around at very, very fast speeds. And you've got a lot of the same elements in oil and gas. So it's about how do you bring convergence to deliver an effective solution that is differentiated. So, I still love the healthcare industry, feel very fortunate to be in Houston as part of it. Oil and gas is very different, but, just as exciting in my view.
We have a question from Martin. He asks, Weatherford is a champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Maybe he works with you. We don't know. What advice would you give small to medium-sized enterprises?
Hey, well, first of all, thank you. We try. I would not personally call ourselves a champion quite yet. I want to champion it. I think we do a really nice job, and I'm incredibly proud of our team. We've got a fantastic D&I program. We've got our employee resource groups, and we've got some incredibly passionate people within the team driving that. And it's, again, one of the most energizing things that I get to see in my interactions with the team. But at the same time, I have a very clear recognition that we've got a ways to go. We have more work to do, and it is something that is front and center for me, because I genuinely believe that diversity of thought, which then comes from diversity of background and experiences, truly gets you better outcomes. And I see that every day with our teams. And so, the only advice I can give is, number one, be very clear in your commitment to it, and try really hard, to make sure that when you're hiring people, you get a diverse slate. At the end of the day, it's about picking the best candidate, regardless of their background. But to make sure you get the best candidate, make sure you've got a very diverse slate. And I think that's something that, regardless of the size of the organization, we can all do. And maybe the only other thing I would say is talk about it. Because to me, the biggest challenge with the whole concept of D&I is having the conversation and making sure that it's a conversation that is filled with candor, and you can actually have a logical discussion about it, recognize where the pitfalls are, recognize where the challenges are, and commit to, hey, we're going to make progress. And this is really the thing for me. This is one of those classic examples of, it's not about a destination, it's about the journey. And as long as you're moving forward, that's the important thing. We're all going to make mistakes. That's okay, but we've got to keep moving forward.
Sticking with kind of culture, we have a question from one of our members. Weatherford is a large community, local community supporter, engager. How do you elaborate? Can you elaborate on, how you select your community projects, your local projects, maybe the philanthropic work that Weatherford is known for here in Houston, and maybe in the sites of which you operate globally?
Yeah, look, it's again something that the company has always believed in, and again, one of the things that I'm very pleased with and to see and very proud to be a part of. In all of our different geographies, I see our teams constantly giving back to the community. Whether it is getting involved in employee activities in schools, with hospitals, with education, with disaster relief. Every single time there is something, our employees are front and center, and it's one of the most exciting things and inspiring things for us to see. Locally within Houston, we are, one of the things that we do every year is something called Weatherford Walks. And I just joined the company last year when we were starting our annual Weatherford Walks campaign. And last year we did it in a somewhat virtual fashion, virtual in the sense that it was a virtual get together. The walking was still physical. So except maybe in my case, where I will admit that it was mostly in my head because I didn't quite do a good enough job. But it's a terrific event, and we donate all of the proceeds that we raise to top charities, and we're excited to be a part of that. And it's a terrific event because it feels really good to give back to the community, but it's also a great way for the teams to come together. So I'm very excited that this year we'll hopefully have the opportunity to all do it in person, get everyone out, get us all moving a little bit, and maybe I'll fit into my pants again. So.
Well, I want to briefly ask a question about energy transition before we run out of time here. Energy transition is largely on the forefront of the industry's minds. What challenges do you anticipate going forward? Specifically.
Yeah, I think, look, at a very broad perspective, I think the first aspect, and depending on the kind of company that you are, is going to be, how do you make sure you're investing enough and getting the returns, right? Because the industry is in this situation where, rightfully so, we have all gravitated towards really making sure we're producing the right returns. And so, how do you really now invest in this that may or may not come through right away? But it's an important, very important theme for us. I think that's something that we've all got to figure out exactly what we're doing, and how do we show that we're making progress alongside that. I think the second thing for me that's challenge is really, what is the right framework around how are we all going to measure actual change? What are the targets? Where are we going to go? And what is going to be is gas the transition fuel? Is it not? Is it, and so some of the things are very obvious, and we'll all continue to work on those. But I think having that macro framework is something that's going to be really, really important. And I think, making sure that there's harmony amongst regulators, around governments, around our customers, and then all of us to make sure that it's one sort of clear picture, I think will be something that'll take a little bit of time, but there is so much innovation going on, and there's so much focus on that. I'm confident that as an industry, we will continue to play a leading role even in the transition.
So I'm going to combine a couple of questions here just for the sake of time. What do you want the secrets to Weatherford's comeback to look like? And what do you expect the company to look like in a few years' time?
Yeah. Hey, so look, first of all, we never went away. So, we've been here, we've been serving our customers, we've been focused on delivering services. Yes, we had a couple of challenges and, clearly some big ones, but we've always been here for our customers and for our employees, and continuing to do what is right by them. Clearly, the company has evolved. We've gone from being a $15 billion company with 85,000 people to now being a much smaller company, with fewer people. But our fundamental purpose really hasn't changed, right? In terms of, we are a technology provider in the OFS space, in the production of wellbore solution space. We aim to be a tier 1 solutions provider, but whatever it is, regardless of the labels, we want to make sure that when we deliver to our customers, we do it with a sense of customer service, of technology differentiation, and adding value to them. Separate from that, though, we also have a tremendous obligation to our shareholders. And they have had a challenging time through the company, and so, which is why, for us, the goal is relatively, again, simple. I'll end with what I started with, which is our job is to get the company back on a path where we are sustainably profitable and generating free cash flow. So that's what, as I look at the next few years, that's really the main thing, is to be able to look at Weatherford and say, this is a company that we now know is sustainably profitable, it generates cash, but also want us to be known for, what some of our hallmarks have been, which is technology innovation, which is tremendous customer service. One of the things that I feel really good about is having customers tell me that we like working with Weatherford. And so that sense of customer service, that sense of humility in front of them, because at the end of the day, that's why we exist, is incredibly important. And lastly, look, I also really would like for us to be known as a place that people genuinely get excited about coming to work. We've got a terrific culture in the company. We call it the One Weatherford culture, and it's been evolving. We're learning some new things, every day, and we're exercising new muscles. But it is a terrific business, and it's filled with incredibly talented people. And to me, that's what really fuels us. It's the tremendous commitment and the talent of our entire workforce. Without them, there is no company. So that's what I want us to be all about.
Girish, I have to say thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us. The World Affairs Council is so pleased that you could join us today. We are going to look forward to many years together, hopefully as collaborating and friends here in Houston. I wish you and Weatherford all the success. If you've enjoyed today's program, make sure you visit all of our other programs on our World Affairs Council of Greater Houston YouTube channel. Thank you, Girish. Thank you all of you for joining us today. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll look forward to our next conversation with global perspectives and local conversations. Thank you. Thanks, Girish.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Bye, everyone.